Monday mornings at Kensington Financial Services were always chaotic, yet meticulously ordered chaos. A symphony of ringing phones, clicking keyboards, and hurried footsteps. For Jasmine Mitchell, a dedicated financial analyst, mornings were her battleground. She thrived amidst the buzzing energy of the Manhattan skyscraper where the company occupied 3 gleaming floors. Jasmine was meticulous, diligent, and punctual, qualities admired by colleagues and superiors alike. At 29, Jasmine carried herself with confidence that came from years of fighting against stereotypes. Her style was vibrant and modern. Bold printed dresses, statement earrings, her natural curls styled immaculately, a look that resonated deeply with her Afrocentric heritage. To her colleagues, she was a reliable, talented employee. To her superiors, however, her style often raised eyebrows. Specifically to Caroline Hoffman, the notoriously conservative HR director. That particular Monday began like any other. Jasmine stepped into the office, her heels clicking softly against polished marble floors. She greeted her team warmly, smiling brightly as she settled at her meticulously organized desk. Jasmine adjusted her glasses and dove into the first task of her day, preparing financial forecasts for an upcoming client meeting. Yet by mid-morning, Jasmine sensed tension brewing. Several glances darted her way, whisperings behind hands, hurried conversations breaking off abruptly when she approached. She pushed the unease aside, focusing instead on her work. Soon after lunch, Jasmine received a short, cryptic email from HR, requesting her immediate presence in Caroline Hoffman's office. As she walked toward the HR suite, a knot tightened in her stomach. Caroline was known for her stern demeanor and adherence to strict traditionalism. Her office, decorated plainly but intimidatingly, always seemed colder than the rest of the building. "Come in," Caroline called curtly when Jasmine knocked. Caroline was seated rigidly behind a vast wooden desk, wearing her habitual gray suit, lips pursed tightly, eyes examining Jasmine with undisguised disdain. Jasmine took her seat quietly, feeling oddly like a student summoned to the principal's office. "Jasmine," Caroline began coldly, "this meeting concerns your appearance." "My appearance?" Jasmine's voice held confusion and cautiousness. "Yes. Your choice of attire and hairstyle have repeatedly violated our company's professional image policy." "My attire?" Jasmine echoed incredulously. She looked down at her vibrant yet professional floral dress. "I don't see the issue." Caroline pressed her fingertips together and exhaled dramatically. "Your appearance, specifically your hairstyle and overly vibrant clothing, has drawn negative attention. It doesn't align with Kensington's professional standards." Jasmine felt her pulse quicken, indignation rising. "I've been working here 5 years, Caroline. My work is impeccable. Nobody has ever raised concerns before." "The management believes otherwise," Caroline retorted sharply. She paused, letting the cold silence build tension. "I'm sorry to inform you, but this issue has become a distraction. Management has decided your employment here will be terminated, effective immediately." The words crashed over Jasmine, disorienting and surreal. Her ears buzzed. The office felt suddenly airless. "Terminated?" she repeated weakly. "Yes, your appearance has been deemed inappropriate and unprofessional. Your termination documents are here." Caroline slid an envelope across the desk. Jasmine stared at it blankly. Rage, humiliation, disbelief, all swirled within her chest. Her hands trembled slightly, yet she steadied herself, her voice barely above a whisper, yet fierce. "This is discrimination, Caroline." Caroline's expression hardened further. "It's a decision made in the company's best interest. I'm sorry, Jasmine, but there's nothing more to discuss." The meeting ended abruptly. Jasmine, numb and shocked, collected her things from her desk amid the prying eyes and whispered rumors now flooding the office. Her colleagues, faces full of pity and curiosity, avoided her gaze. Only Marissa, her closest friend and colleague, approached her cautiously. "I'm so sorry, Jasmine," Marissa whispered, hugging her quickly. "This isn't fair." "Thanks, Marissa," Jasmine managed softly, holding back tears. "I know it isn't." She left Kensington Financial Services that day feeling humiliated, betrayed, and burning with injustice. As she stepped onto the busy Manhattan sidewalk, anger surged powerfully through her veins. She was hurt, yes, but beneath the hurt was a fierce determination that had always defined her. Jasmine knew this was not merely about losing a job. It was a profound injustice rooted in prejudice. She had been punished for embracing her identity. Jasmine realized this moment wasn't merely an ending. It was the start of something monumental. Kensington Financial Services might have dismissed her for her appearance, But she would not be silenced so easily. The bustling city around her seemed oblivious to her turmoil, yet she knew she was not alone. How many others had experienced similar discrimination, forced to conform or face exclusion? Her pain sparked an idea, a spark that quickly grew into a powerful flame of resolve. Standing on that noisy New York street, Jasmine made a decision. She would not simply fade away quietly. She would fight, not only for herself but for countless others suffering silently under similar prejudices. This was her turning point, her mission, and from that moment, Jasmine Mitchell was no longer merely an employee fired unjustly. She was now an advocate, ready to wage war against discrimination, ready to reclaim dignity, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been judged unfairly. She didn't yet know exactly how, but she knew clearly that this day was the beginning of something powerful and transformative. Jasmine took a deep breath, set her shoulders confidently, and walked away from Kensington's imposing building, determined to turn her personal tragedy into a story of triumph. Jasmine awoke the next morning, still tangled in disbelief and frustration. The city outside buzzed into life, indifferent to her sleepless night. Her Brooklyn apartment, a cozy sanctuary filled with vibrant plants and art she'd carefully collected over the years, felt oddly hollow today. Her termination replayed endlessly in her mind, a cruel loop of humiliation and injustice. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, examining her reflection. Her natural curls, something she'd always proudly embraced, suddenly seemed defiant. Yesterday they'd become an excuse to dismiss her. Yet, even through her anger, Jasmine saw clearly how twisted the logic was. Fired simply because she refused to compromise her identity to fit outdated corporate ideals. The injustice burned brightly within her, igniting determination to transform her pain into meaningful action. Over a cup of strong coffee, Jasmine replayed Caroline Hoffman's cold, dismissive words, her stomach tightening. She wasn't angry merely at losing her job. Her anger ran deeper, targeting a system that valued conformity over individuality, prejudice over talent. Jasmine's phone buzzed, shaking her from deep thought. It was Marissa, her voice gentle but firm with solidarity. "Jasmine, everyone's talking about it," Marissa began cautiously. "The way Caroline handled your dismissal. People are upset, confused. Some are afraid to speak up, but others, well, others want to support you." Jasmine sighed, grateful but cautious. "Support me? Are you sure, Marissa? Are you?" "Yesterday no one even made eye contact." "It was shock more than anything," Marissa explained earnestly. "People felt intimidated by Caroline. But trust me, you're not alone. And Jasmine, there's something else. This has happened before. Remember Brenda, the receptionist who suddenly quit 2 months ago?" Jasmine frowned, recalling Brenda clearly. A bright young woman with expressive braids, who mysteriously disappeared from the company without explanation. "She didn't quit," Marissa revealed quietly. "She was also forced out. Same reason. Her appearance was labeled inappropriate. Brenda told me privately before she left. She didn't have the courage to fight it." Anger surged anew in Jasmine's chest, her resolve deepening. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern, ingrained in Kensington's corporate culture. Jasmine realized her dismissal wasn't just personal. It was systemic. Her next move crystallized clearly. She needed to reach Brenda, to build solidarity and gather evidence against Kensington. "Marissa, do you still have Brenda's number?" "I do," Marissa replied quickly. "I'll text it immediately. Jasmine, whatever you decide to do, I'm with you." "Thank you, Marissa. I'll keep you posted." Minutes later, Jasmine nervously dialed Brenda's number. Her heart pounded, uncertain how Brenda would react. After several anxious rings, Brenda answered cautiously, her voice hesitant. "Hello? Brenda? It's Jasmine Mitchell from Kensington." A pause stretched briefly, then Brenda's voice softened. "Oh, Jasmine. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." "Thank you, Brenda." Jasmine exhaled slowly, gathering her words. "But I'm not calling for sympathy. I'm calling to do something about it. Marissa told me Kensington did the same to you. Is it true?" Silence lingered heavily before Brenda finally answered. "Yes. They said my braids were distracting and unprofessional. When I refused to change, they pressured me into resigning quietly. They offered severance to keep me silent." "That's disgusting!" Jasmine's voice trembled with rage. "Brenda, we can't let this keep happening. I'm ready to fight, but I can't do this alone. Will you help me?" Brenda hesitated, clearly fearful of reopening past wounds. "Jasmine, you're brave, but I'm not sure. Kensington is powerful. Going against them, it's risky." I know it is, Jasmine agreed firmly. But imagine how many others have suffered silently, or how many more will, unless we stand together. Brenda's silence stretched anxiously. Finally, determination edged into her voice. You're right. I've been quiet long enough. Count me in. Their conversation ignited something powerful in Jasmine, a growing sense that their struggle extended far beyond Kensington. This was a societal battle, rooted deeply in racism and cultural prejudice. Fired up, Jasmine began researching legal options, determined to understand exactly how companies justified firing employees over natural hairstyles or culturally significant clothing. Her initial search quickly revealed a disturbing reality. In the United States, such discrimination was widespread and disturbingly legal in many states. Jasmine found countless stories like hers. Teachers forced to straighten hair, receptionists disciplined for wearing headscarves, salespeople terminated for dreadlocks. The injustice was overwhelming, yet also empowering. Jasmine saw clearly her new purpose. She wasn't simply fighting Kensington, she was challenging an entire flawed system. Fueled by newfound resolve, Jasmine created an online forum titled Empowered Voices. It started modestly, a single post detailing her own experience, but within hours her story resonated. Comments poured in rapidly, stories of humiliation, silent compliance, anger, and frustration. Jasmine realized her dismissal had become a catalyst, sparking broader awareness. As her forum grew exponentially over the next days, Jasmine's phone buzzed constantly, filled with messages of solidarity, offers of legal assistance, and heartbreaking accounts from employees nationwide. Journalists began to take interest, contacting her for interviews, wanting to amplify her story. Yet Jasmine knew publicity alone wasn't enough. True change required legislative action. Laws specifically banning workplace discrimination based on appearance linked to racial or cultural identity. Her days quickly transformed into endless calls, emails, and planning sessions, pushing toward concrete action. Late one evening, exhausted yet fiercely determined, Jasmine received a call that shifted her fight significantly. It was from Senator Diane Sullivan's office, one of New York's most outspoken legislators known for championing civil rights causes. Jasmine felt her pulse quicken with excitement and hope. Ms. Mitchell, a calm, professional voice greeted her warmly. We've been following your situation closely. Senator Sullivan would like to meet with you personally. Your story has deeply moved her, and she wants to help you push for legislative change. Jasmine's voice trembled slightly, the magnitude of the opportunity dawning upon her. I would be honored to meet Senator Sullivan. Excellent, the voice confirmed crisply. We'll arrange a meeting at the earliest opportunity. Hanging up, Jasmine sat silently for several moments, absorbing the enormity of what was unfolding. Just days earlier, she'd felt helpless, victimized. Now, her personal injustice was evolving into a profound opportunity to enact meaningful change. She realized clearly that the fight ahead would be demanding, fraught with obstacles, opposition, and possibly danger. Yet Jasmine was resolute. She knew her struggle was not isolated. It was universal, powerful, necessary. Turning her eyes toward the skyline glowing softly through her apartment window, Jasmine understood she was no longer fighting merely for herself. She was now a voice for thousands, perhaps millions, who've suffered silently beneath unjust systems. The movement had awakened, and Jasmine Mitchell stood defiantly at its heart. Jasmine's meeting with Senator Diane Sullivan was scheduled for a brisk autumn afternoon. The crisp October air was punctuated by the rhythmic steps of busy New Yorkers, each absorbed in their own routines. Jasmine arrived early, her heart beating quickly in a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The senator's Manhattan office was located in an impressive building overlooking the bustling city, symbolizing the power and possibility that lay within. She had dressed carefully, choosing a sleek yet bold pantsuit, professional yet unapologetically reflective of her identity. As Jasmine entered this building's vast lobby, sunlight flooded through high glass windows, casting long golden shadows across the polished marble floors. Despite the grandeur, Jasmine felt grounded, aware that she represented not just herself, but countless others whose voices remained unheard. After a brief wait, she was guided into Senator Sullivan's spacious office. Senator Sullivan, in her late 50s, was well known for her tireless advocacy on social issues. Her short silver hair, stylish reading glasses, and sharp gaze conveyed both wisdom and resolve. Miss Mitchell, the senator stood warmly, extending her hand. I'm Diane Sullivan. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you, Senator Sullivan, Jasmine replied firmly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The pleasure is mine, and please, call me Jasmine. They sat opposite each other, separated only by a neatly organized desk scattered lightly with paperwork, a laptop open to a news article, an article featuring Jasmine herself. Your situation has garnered significant attention, Jasmine, Senator Sullivan began, her voice firm yet compassionate. But more importantly, it's brought to light a deeper systemic problem. The discrimination you faced. This isn't an isolated issue. I've realized exactly that, Jasmine replied passionately. Since I spoke publicly, I've heard from hundreds of others across the country who've faced similar treatment, Senator. This isn't just about Kensington Financial. It's widespread, ingrained, and devastating. Senator Sullivan nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely correct. The discrimination based on hairstyle and cultural appearance disproportionately affects Black women, and it's high time this issue received serious legislative attention. Jasmine's pulse quickened. Exactly. Companies like Kensington exploit vague policies to justify firing employees whose appearances don't fit narrow, outdated standards. It's harmful and unjust. I completely agree, Sullivan responded, leaning forward slightly, her gaze intense. That's why I invited you here today, Jasmine. I'm considering sponsoring federal legislation specifically banning this type of discrimination. However, legislation requires more than political will. It requires public momentum. Your voice, your passion, and your story could be instrumental. Jasmine felt the gravity of the senator's words settle heavily yet empowering within her. Senator Sullivan, I'm more than willing to help, but I want to understand clearly. What exactly would this entail? Senator Sullivan leaned back thoughtfully. Introducing legislation is complex, Jasmine. It requires public awareness campaigns, media engagements, testimonies, petitions, and coalition building with advocacy groups and grassroots movements. Essentially, you would become a public advocate, a face for this movement. You'd testify before Congress, appear on television, give speeches, and rally public support. Jasmine hesitated briefly, aware of the immense responsibility and exposure. She had always valued her privacy, her life previously predictable and secure. This offer meant willingly stepping into the public eye, becoming vulnerable not only to support, but also scrutiny, backlash, and potentially even threats. Noticing Jasmine's hesitation, Senator Sullivan added gently, I understand your reservations, Jasmine. This role wouldn't be easy, but real societal change rarely is. We need brave, authentic voices like yours. Jasmine paused, exhaling slowly, her heart wrestling with doubt and determination. The senator's phone buzzed softly. Sullivan silenced it quickly, fully attentive to Jasmine's response. The quiet intensity of the moment underscored how significant her decision would be. After a moment's contemplation, Jasmine's eyes met Senator Sullivan's resolutely. Senator, this isn't merely about me. It's about countless others who've been forced to conform or risk losing their livelihoods. If my experience can help ignite lasting change, then I'm fully prepared to stand publicly with you. Senator Sullivan smiled warmly, relief and admiration evident in her expression. Excellent. Together, Jasmine, I truly believe we can create powerful, lasting change. The remainder of the meeting was spent discussing strategy, laying out a clear yet ambitious roadmap. Jasmine left the senator's office invigorated yet slightly overwhelmed. The task before her was monumental, changing laws, shifting public perceptions, challenging deeply rooted cultural prejudices. Yet beneath her uncertainty lay profound hope and clarity. Within days, Jasmine's advocacy role was officially announced. Media outlets seized the compelling narrative. A dedicated professional unjustly terminated over culturally significant hairstyle and attire, now spearheading a national movement against workplace discrimination. Interviews, articles, and social media attention rapidly elevated her profile, bringing both support and hostility. However, amid the public momentum, a surprising development emerged. Late one evening, Jasmine received a cautious text from Marissa. Jasmine, heads up. Kensington management is launching a smear campaign against you, privately discrediting your performance and character to discourage others from speaking out. Caroline Hoffman spreading whispers that you were disruptive and insubordinate long before your dismissal. Anger and indignation surged sharply within Jasmine. It wasn't merely about her termination anymore. Kensington was actively attacking her reputation to undermine the growing movement. Aware she couldn't afford a passive response, Jasmine swiftly coordinated with Senator Sullivan's team and publicly confronted Kensington's claims head-on during a televised interview. I'm deeply disappointed by Kensington's attempt to rewrite reality, Jasmine stated firmly to the journalist interviewing her, her voice strong, unwavering. I served Kensington Financial diligently for 5 years. Never once was my performance questioned, not until I refused to compromise my identity. Their response, attempting to silence me through false accusations, only confirms exactly why legislative action is urgently needed. Her bold, articulate response resonated powerfully, earning public respect and sympathy. The company's smear campaign backfired spectacularly, galvanizing additional support for Jasmine's cause and amplifying the urgency of legislative intervention. The weeks following became an exhausting yet exhilarating whirlwind. Jasmine's inbox overflowed with messages from supporters nationwide. Grassroots movements, civil rights organizations, and influential public figures began aligning themselves publicly with Jasmine's mission. Brenda, too, became active, courageously sharing her own experiences in interviews and forums. Yet privately, Jasmine struggled. The constant public exposure left her emotionally drained, longing occasionally for the quiet anonymity she'd once enjoyed. The weight of expectation, of being the face of an emerging movement, felt occasionally overwhelming. One evening, weary and restless, Jasmine found herself staring from her apartment window over the glittering city skyline, pondering deeply the journey that had brought her here. Her life had irrevocably changed, set now upon a path both profoundly meaningful yet emotionally demanding. Despite her fatigue, Jasmine felt immense pride and clarity. This fight mattered, deeply and urgently. If enduring public scrutiny and emotional strain meant creating lasting protections against discrimination, then the sacrifice was unquestionably worth it. Resolving anew, Jasmine realized clearly the power of authenticity. The courage of being unapologetically herself had sparked not just a movement but a shift in cultural dialogue. She'd embraced vulnerability, overcoming fear, and found extraordinary strength and purpose in doing so. She knew clearly the path forward was challenging, fraught with adversity and opposition. But Jasmine Mitchell was no longer alone. A nation stood alongside her, watching, inspired, ready for change. As Jasmine's visibility surged, her life became a whirlwind of relentless advocacy. Each day was packed with interviews, public appearances, and meticulous planning sessions alongside Senator Sullivan's dedicated legislative team. Her voice resonated in living rooms, boardrooms, and college campuses across America, creating a groundswell of support for meaningful reform. Yet, beneath the bright lights of public attention, lay a personal cost Jasmine had scarcely anticipated. Her previously quiet Brooklyn apartment transformed rapidly into a bustling command center. News crews regularly stationed themselves outside her building, hoping for spontaneous interviews or candid photographs. Privacy became a distant memory, replaced by a relentless barrage of social media notifications, phone calls, emails, and handwritten letters from supporters and critics alike. Initially, Jasmine felt invigorated by the attention, fueled by the collective energy of supporters nationwide. But soon, darker elements emerged. Alongside messages of solidarity, an undercurrent of hostility surfaced. Vicious online attacks, hateful emails, anonymous threats escalating steadily in severity. Late one evening, Jasmine sat at her desk, fatigue deepening the shadows beneath her eyes, scrolling through comments online. Amid expressions of gratitude and encouragement, hateful comments stood starkly. Comments targeting her race, her gender, her intentions, her appearance. They accused her of seeking publicity, of fabricating claims of discrimination, or even attempting to divide America along racial lines. Her heart tightened painfully. Jasmine had expected opposition, but the venomous intensity startled her. She stared blankly at her screen, pulse racing with hurt and anger. The ugly vitriol wasn't merely abstract. It felt deeply personal, tearing at the very essence of her courage and conviction. Suddenly, her phone vibrated sharply, breaking her thoughts. The screen flashed urgently, a text from Marissa. "Jasmine, turn on Channel 4 right now. They're interviewing Caroline Hoffman." A sinking dread washed through Jasmine. Quickly, she switched on the television. Caroline, Kensington's icy HR director, appeared calm, composed, and disturbingly convincing. "I deeply regret that Jasmine Mitchell feels wronged by our organization," Caroline stated coolly, her tone poised yet chillingly dismissive. "However, Kensington Financial Services terminated her employment solely due to repeated violations of our clearly stated dress and grooming policies. We've always valued diversity and professionalism. Unfortunately, Jasmine repeatedly refused to adhere to established standards." Jasmine's jaw clenched, her fists tightening with frustration. Caroline continued smoothly, each carefully chosen word strategically undermining Jasmine's credibility. "We were genuinely surprised and saddened when Jasmine decided to publicly accuse Kensington of discrimination. These accusations are completely unfounded and deeply hurtful to our dedicated team." The journalist interviewing Caroline leaned forward thoughtfully. "But Ms. Hoffman, Numerous former Kensington employees have come forward corroborating Jasmine's claims, citing similar treatment. Caroline hesitated briefly, though her composure barely wavered. We stand by our policies as fair and reasonable. Regrettably, some employees may misconstrue standards meant purely to uphold professional decorum. Jasmine switched off the television abruptly, heart pounding. Caroline's manipulative framing felt infuriatingly effective. Jasmine recognized clearly Kensington's strategy, casting doubt, distorting truth, shifting blame to neutralize public support for the movement. Yet, rather than weakening her resolve, Jasmine's anger intensified her determination. She knew clearly she couldn't afford passivity. Immediately, Jasmine contacted Senator Sullivan's team, strategizing an aggressive public response. The next morning, Jasmine appeared live on a prominent morning news program, confident yet emotionally raw, directly countering Caroline's statements. Caroline Hoffman claims Kensington Financial's policies are fair, neutral, and inclusive. Jasmine began clearly, her voice unwavering. Yet neutral grooming policies disproportionately target employees whose hairstyles or clothing choices are culturally significant. Let's speak plainly. Policies that penalize natural black hairstyles or culturally expressive attire aren't neutral, they're discriminatory. Her bold rebuttal quickly gained traction online, resonating powerfully with viewers nationwide. But with heightened visibility came intensified backlash. Her social media accounts flooded with escalating threats, venomous messages, and even grotesque doctored images designed to intimidate and humiliate her. Jasmine's friends expressed concern, urging her to step back momentarily for safety. Brenda called anxiously one evening, her voice strained with worry. "Jasmine, I admire your courage immensely," Brenda pleaded softly. "But the threats you're receiving, they're genuinely dangerous. Maybe you should consider a short break." Jasmine exhaled wearily, her voice heavy yet resolute. "Brenda, I appreciate your concern deeply, truly. But stepping back now would signal to Kensington, and every company like them, that intimidation works. I refuse to give them that victory." Yet privately, anxiety grew steadily within Jasmine. She began noticing unfamiliar faces lingering near her apartment, anonymous vehicles parked suspiciously close. Sleepless nights became common, her apartment suddenly feeling vulnerable rather than comforting. One evening, after a long day of legislative preparations, Jasmine returned home feeling drained yet restless. As she approached her apartment door, she immediately noticed something alarming. A small, unmarked envelope taped securely against the doorframe. Anxiety twisted sharply within her chest. Cautiously, Jasmine removed the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a chillingly brief note, handwritten crudely. "Stop your lies or we'll silence you ourselves." Jasmine's breath caught sharply, her heart pounding erratically. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was a tangible threat. Fear and anger warred intensely within her. Shakily, she entered her apartment, locking every door and window securely behind her. That night, sleep eluded her entirely. Jasmine grappled deeply with mounting anxiety, feeling vulnerable yet fiercely defiant. This intimidation campaign was intended precisely to break her spirit. But Jasmine knew clearly surrender wasn't an option. The stakes were too high, the movement too critical. Early the next morning, exhausted yet resolute, Jasmine contacted the police, officially documenting each threat and incident. Additionally, Senator Sullivan's team swiftly arranged enhanced security measures. Publicly, Jasmine addressed the threats candidly during another high-profile television appearance. "Yes, threats have been made against me personally," Jasmine acknowledged bravely, her voice firm. "These threats aim to silence, intimidate, and stop progress. But let me be clear, intimidation tactics will fail. Each threat only underscores exactly why legislative action against discrimination is urgently necessary." Her courageous transparency generated overwhelming public support. Prominent civil rights organizations condemned the intimidation campaign publicly, rallying behind Jasmine even more fiercely. Yet privately, Jasmine struggled profoundly. The emotional toll felt heavy, isolating. She missed the simplicity of her old life, longed desperately for the freedom of anonymity. Yet each message from supporters, particularly heartfelt messages from young black professionals inspired by her bravery, reignited her purpose, reminding her exactly why this battle mattered. As weeks passed, Jasmine grappled deeply with the personal price of visibility. The threats persisted, occasionally escalating dangerously, yet her resolve strengthened steadily. Her life had irrevocably changed, transformed from quiet professional anonymity to public figure and advocate for justice. Despite exhaustion and fear, Jasmine found surprising strength within herself, strength rooted deeply in authenticity, courage, and the unyielding belief in equality. She accepted clearly now that the battle she faced wasn't merely political. It was profoundly personal, emotional, and societal. And despite every risk, Jasmine Mitchell stood firm, determined to see this fight through. Whatever price visibility demanded, however steep, however frightening, she resolved deeply within herself that the fight for justice outweighed personal cost. As autumn turned steadily toward winter, Jasmine's life became increasingly consumed by the movement she'd ignited. Her advocacy had grown into a powerful national conversation, demanding accountability from employers across industries. Yet even amid this growing success, Jasmine sensed a gathering storm, one that reached far beyond the immediate backlash she'd already endured. One chilly November evening, Jasmine received an unexpected phone call from her mother, Beverly Mitchell, a retired teacher living in her cozy suburban home in Connecticut. Beverly rarely called late at night unless it was serious. "Jasmine, honey," Beverly began, her usually calm voice strained with worry. "I received a strange phone call today. It was from someone claiming to be a journalist, but something felt off. They kept asking me questions about your past, personal questions about things that happened years ago." Jasmine's stomach tightened anxiously. "What kinds of things?" "About your college years, Jasmine. Specifically about the incident with Lauren," Beverly explained cautiously. Jasmine felt suddenly nauseous at the mention of Lauren's name. A shadow she'd long buried began to resurface painfully. "Mom," Jasmine replied carefully, her throat tightening. "Please, don't answer any more calls about that. Just hang up. They're trying to dig up anything to discredit me." Beverly hesitated slightly before speaking again. "I know, sweetheart. But what worries me is how they found out about Lauren. That was years ago, Jasmine. Someone is intentionally trying to hurt you." The call ended soon after, leaving Jasmine alone with memories she'd desperately suppressed. Lauren Davenport had been Jasmine's closest friend during her junior year at Columbia University. They had shared laughter, secrets, late-night studying, inseparable, until a terrible misunderstanding abruptly ended their friendship and cast a dark shadow over Jasmine's life. Jasmine sank onto her couch, the weight of old memories flooding back. Lauren had falsely accused Jasmine of cheating academically, a misunderstanding rooted in jealousy over Jasmine's rising academic achievements. Although the university ultimately cleared Jasmine completely, the damage was permanent. Her reputation on campus suffered severely. Friendships fractured, trust broken, leaving Jasmine isolated and emotionally scarred. Now, over a decade later, someone was deliberately excavating this painful chapter to damage her credibility. It was a calculated, vicious move. Jasmine felt her vulnerability sharply. Her opponents clearly realized their previous intimidation attempts had failed, so now they'd escalated, targeting her character, trying to exploit an old, painful wound. Over the following days, Jasmine remained tense, apprehensive of the inevitable revelation she knew would soon hit the media. Then, exactly as anticipated, a sensational article appeared prominently online, headlined starkly, "Who is Jasmine Mitchell really? Past accusations of academic dishonesty resurface." The article was meticulously crafted, every word carefully chosen to cast suspicion, hinting vaguely yet insidiously that Jasmine had manipulated the system to clear her name. Although filled with innuendo and carefully disguised slander, the piece never explicitly accused her, cleverly avoiding defamation claims. Within hours, Jasmine's social media flooded anew. Critics emboldened by perceived vulnerabilities attacked her credibility viciously. Friends and allies privately offered cautious support, though publicly, many hesitated, uncertain what was truth or distortion. Senator Sullivan's team immediately contacted Jasmine, reassuring her support remained solid, but the senator herself urged Jasmine to publicly address the accusations transparently. Yet Jasmine hesitated. The trauma of that painful period lingered rawly. Revisiting it publicly felt overwhelmingly intrusive. Each online attack reopened emotional scars, doubts creeping painfully into her consciousness. Alone in her apartment, late at night, Jasmine felt deeply vulnerable. Tears came unexpectedly, grief for lost friendships mingling bitterly with fresh betrayal. One particularly difficult evening, Jasmine's phone vibrated softly. Marissa texted gently, sensing her friend's deep emotional pain. "Jasmine, I'm here whenever you're ready. Talk to me." Jasmine paused briefly, loneliness winning out against fear, and quickly dialed Marissa's number. Marissa answered instantly. "I'm listening, Jasmine. Whatever you need." "Marissa," Jasmine began weakly, her voice strained, vulnerable. "I feel broken. They're attacking everything I've ever built. My past, my friendships, Even things I thought I'd healed from. Maybe, I don't know, maybe this is too much. Marissa's voice softened compassionately. Jasmine, listen closely. They're targeting your past because your present terrifies them. You're powerful, influential, authentic. They're desperate because you're winning. Don't let their tactics break you. You're not alone. Hearing Marissa's unwavering support lifted some burden from Jasmine's heart. She realized clearly how isolation had magnified her vulnerability. She needed allies, real allies, to help her navigate the emotional complexities now threatening her mental health. Determined to confront the issue head-on, Jasmine reached out cautiously to Lauren Davenport directly, something she'd never considered before. After years of estrangement, she felt anxious uncertainty, unsure if Lauren would even respond. Late one evening, Jasmine composed a carefully honest email. Lauren, it's Jasmine Mitchell. I never thought I'd contact you again, yet here we are. You've likely seen the articles resurfacing what happened at Columbia. Someone is deliberately using our past conflict to damage the work I'm doing now. I'm asking you openly for truth's sake. Would you help me set this straight publicly? Hours later, Lauren replied cautiously yet thoughtfully. Jasmine, I honestly never expected to hear from you again. You're right. I've seen the articles, and I've felt awful about what happened between us for years. My accusations back then were driven by jealousy, immaturity. I've regretted it deeply since. I'm sorry for everything I caused you. Yes, Jasmine, I'll publicly set the record straight. It's the least I can do. Relief flooded Jasmine profoundly. Lauren's willingness to publicly clarify brought unexpected healing. Days later, Lauren published her open letter, courageously admitting her own responsibility. Years ago, driven by immaturity and jealousy, I falsely accused Jasmine Mitchell of academic dishonesty. Columbia University thoroughly investigated and exonerated Jasmine fully. My accusations were untrue, harmful, and unfair. I regret deeply any ongoing harm my actions caused Jasmine. Today, I publicly and unequivocally affirm her integrity. Lauren's courageous honesty powerfully shifted public perceptions back toward Jasmine. Support surged anew. The incident, rather than weakening Jasmine, galvanized public admiration for her honesty, vulnerability, and courage. Yet privately, Jasmine recognized the emotional toll this chapter had exacted. Despite the healing power of reconciliation, the stress had left her emotionally drained. Quietly, she grappled deeply with lingering anxieties, insomnia becoming routine, quiet moments haunted by anxiety about what attacks might come next. Senator Sullivan, deeply aware of Jasmine's emotional struggle, offered compassionate advice. Jasmine, real strength includes recognizing when to rest. Take a few days, recover emotionally. The fight is long, and we need you healthy. Understanding the wisdom in Senator Sullivan's words, Jasmine finally permitted herself respite, traveling home briefly to Connecticut, seeking solace in her mother's comforting presence. Beverly Mitchell welcomed Jasmine warmly, enveloping her in unconditional love and support. Over several quiet days, Jasmine regained strength. Long walks through serene autumn woods, heartfelt conversations with her mother, nourishing home-cooked meals restoring emotional equilibrium. Gradually, anxiety eased, replaced steadily by renewed resilience. One quiet evening, Beverly spoke softly to Jasmine beside the fireplace, her words firm yet gentle, carrying profound wisdom. Remember, Jasmine, you're not defined by your past or by anyone else's perception of it. You're defined only by how you respond to adversity. Keep moving forward, my love. Jasmine embraced her mother tightly, clarity returning powerfully. Beverly was right. Jasmine could never control others' attacks or opinions. She could only control her response. Reaffirming her determination, Jasmine felt stronger than ever. She returned to New York revitalized, prepared emotionally and mentally for whatever lay ahead. Jasmine knew clearly now that the shadows of her past had no power unless she surrendered to them. She was ready once again to step into the spotlight, fearless and resolute, committed deeply to the justice she pursued. Winter deepened its grip on New York City, coating its bustling streets in layers of frost and fresh snow. Yet Jasmine Mitchell felt an internal warmth, a fierce resolve renewed by the recent confrontation with her past. Lauren Davenport's public apology had shifted the narrative dramatically, turning potential humiliation into powerful vindication. Jasmine's credibility soared, reaffirming her leadership within the burgeoning anti-discrimination movement. Yet even with public momentum clearly in her favor, Jasmine felt acutely aware of those still afraid to come forward. People quietly enduring workplace discrimination, fearing retaliation or dismissal. Her own struggle had been exhausting, even harrowing at times. But she recognized clearly that her courage had inspired many to find their own voice. Now her priority shifted from personal vindication toward empowering others. Determined to further humanize the movement, Jasmine partnered with Senator Sullivan's team to organize a groundbreaking national campaign called Breaking the Silence. The goal was clear: collect testimonies from employees nationwide, documenting widespread systemic discrimination related to appearance, race, and cultural identity. The response proved staggering. Within days, Jasmine's team received thousands of stories, personal narratives pouring in from across industries and geographic locations. Teachers, healthcare workers, retail employees, corporate executives, all sharing intimate, powerful accounts of prejudice and harassment they'd silently endured. Each evening, Jasmine reviewed these heartbreaking yet inspiring testimonies. Alone in her apartment, she often found herself deeply moved. Stories of humiliation, intimidation, loss of dignity, and even careers derailed simply due to natural hairstyles, culturally significant attire, or personal authenticity. One story in particular struck Jasmine deeply. A young woman named Amber Collins from Atlanta described being repeatedly pressured by her employer, a prestigious law firm, to straighten her natural hair. After refusing, Amber found herself excluded from meetings, overlooked for promotions, and subtly ostracized. Amber's courageously detailed testimony described vividly the emotional toll, the erosion of self-confidence, anxiety, isolation, and despair. Moved profoundly by Amber's experience, Jasmine contacted her directly, arranging a personal call. Amber answered nervously, her voice cautious but hopeful. "Amber, your story deeply touched me," Jasmine began warmly, offering sincere comfort. "You're incredibly brave for sharing your experience." Amber's voice shook slightly, overwhelmed by emotion. "Thank you, Jasmine. Honestly, sharing publicly terrified me. But your courage, seeing your bravery, gave me strength to speak openly." "Amber, your voice is vital," Jasmine encouraged passionately. "Would you consider publicly testifying alongside me when we present these stories before Congress?" Amber paused briefly, hesitating slightly before replying resolutely. "If standing publicly helps protect others, I'll do it. Count me in." Jasmine felt immediate respect for Amber's quiet courage, recognizing clearly the power of solidarity. Over subsequent days, Jasmine connected personally with dozens more individuals from the collected testimonies, creating a coalition of courageous voices prepared to speak openly, publicly challenging the discriminatory practices so deeply entrenched in corporate America. As public anticipation of the congressional hearing intensified, Jasmine received another surprising yet deeply significant call, this time from an unexpected figure: Derek Hammond, Kensington Financial's former vice president of operations. Derek had recently resigned from Kensington under mysterious circumstances. Jasmine recalled him distantly, a serious man in his early 40s, known widely for integrity but always remaining neutral during internal conflicts. His voice sounded cautious yet sincere when he spoke. "Jasmine, you might find this unexpected, but I've been following your advocacy closely. I resigned from Kensington specifically because of how they treated you. I was disgusted, but I stayed silent publicly. I regret that deeply now." Jasmine listened carefully, sensing authenticity yet wary after so many betrayals. "Why did you decide to reach out now, Derek?" "Because silence makes me complicit," Derek admitted honestly, shame evident in his tone. "I can't remain quiet anymore. Kensington's discrimination policies aren't accidental. They're deliberate, strategically enforced to maintain a very specific, narrow corporate image. I witnessed it myself, repeatedly." Jasmine's pulse quickened, recognizing Derek's potential testimony as a powerful, credible insider voice. "Derek, are you willing to speak publicly before Congress? Your voice could decisively expose Kensington's discriminatory practices." He paused briefly, carefully weighing consequences before answering firmly. "Yes, Jasmine. Publicly testifying is precisely why I called you. It's the right thing, even if it means facing backlash from Kensington and my professional network." Jasmine felt immense gratitude. Derek's courageous decision marked a critical turning point. Now bolstered by internal testimony from a high-ranking former executive, the movement's evidence was undeniable. Finally, the day arrived. A bitterly cold January morning in Washington, D.C. Jasmine stood outside the imposing congressional building, its grand architecture symbolizing democracy and justice. Beside her stood Amber, Derek, Brenda, and several other brave individuals prepared to publicly challenge systemic discrimination, their presence radiating quiet strength and dignity. Inside, the congressional hearing room filled quickly. Journalists, legislators, advocacy groups, and corporate representatives crowding the ornate chamber. Senator Diane Sullivan chaired the session, her voice clear and authoritative as proceedings began. Jasmine testified first, speaking eloquently yet emotionally, clearly detailing her personal experience, firing, humiliation, intimidation attempts, and the broader implications of permitting appearance-based discrimination. Her testimony resonated powerfully, audience attentively moved. Amber Collins spoke next, her voice initially trembling yet strengthening steadily as she recounted vividly the emotional trauma endured due to discriminatory workplace policies. Tears glistened visibly among audience members. Derek Hammond's testimony proved explosive. Calmly, methodically, he described Kensington's deliberate discriminatory practices. The coded language management employed, internal memos explicitly directing supervisors to target employees whose appearance didn't fit Kensington's desired image. Gasps echoed audibly within the chamber. Media immediately seized Derek's revelations, rapidly amplifying the hearing's impact nationwide. Public outrage erupted powerfully, demands for legislative action intensifying dramatically. Throughout the emotionally charged session, Jasmine's heart swelled deeply. Witnessing individuals bravely break their silence filled her profoundly with pride. Their courage collectively transformed private suffering into undeniable public urgency. After the hearing, Senator Sullivan privately praised Jasmine warmly. "Today was remarkable. Jasmine, your courage empowered others profoundly. You've made history, truly." Yet privately, Jasmine understood clearly that the journey remained far from over. Powerful corporate interests would inevitably retaliate, using every tactic available: legal challenges, smear campaigns, political pressure. Still, her spirit felt profoundly renewed. Each brave voice joining the movement amplified Jasmine's resolve immeasurably. Returning briefly to New York that night, Jasmine received hundreds of supportive messages from across the nation. Among them, a surprising email appeared, a short yet powerfully emotional message from Caroline Hoffman herself. "Jasmine, I watched today's hearing closely. I never imagined how much pain our policies caused. I see now how wrong I've been. For what it's worth, I deeply regret my part in your suffering." Staring quietly at Caroline's unexpected message, Jasmine realized clearly how transformative their advocacy had become, even changing hearts previously hardened by prejudice. Deep satisfaction filled Jasmine's heart, recognizing the immense power truth and courage possessed. She replied simply, compassionately, "Caroline, acknowledgement is the first step. Real change begins now." Indeed, change was happening, quietly yet profoundly. Jasmine knew clearly her fight would continue, likely intensifying. Yet tonight, she allowed herself quiet celebration, gratitude, and hope. She'd successfully helped break decades of oppressive silence, and Jasmine Mitchell knew unquestionably now that silence, once broken, could never return. The days following the historic congressional hearing were marked by a surge of hope and optimism for Jasmine Mitchell. News coverage had exploded nationwide, and the public response was overwhelmingly supportive. Jasmine's social media profiles were flooded with messages of encouragement, gratitude, and solidarity from people who'd experienced similar injustices but had never dared speak out. Her inbox overflowed daily with testimonies from countless individuals inspired by the bravery of the witnesses, particularly Amber Collins and Derek Hammond. Yet even amid this growing movement, Jasmine knew well enough that change was never linear nor easy. As the wave of public enthusiasm surged, resistance began quietly, methodically, to gather strength behind closed doors. Corporate America, unsettled by Jasmine's advocacy, quickly began mobilizing resources. Powerful business groups and lobbying associations discreetly coordinated their response. They sought not just to slow down the proposed legislation, but to destroy Jasmine's credibility entirely, viewing her as a direct threat to their authority and image. One early February morning, Jasmine woke to troubling news. Several influential business lobbying groups had issued a joint statement strongly opposing the new legislation, arguing that such regulations would infringe upon private businesses' rights to set their own professional standards. The statement was carefully crafted, using language designed to minimize the issue. Phrases like common-sense professionalism standards and reasonable expectations for workplace decorum. Jasmine recognized immediately the danger in this framing. By portraying her advocacy as excessive, even irrational, they attempted to paint the movement as an unnecessary infringement on business autonomy. Senator Sullivan's team responded swiftly, challenging the lobbyists publicly. Yet privately, the senator warned Jasmine clearly. The opposition was powerful, wealthy, and politically connected. They would do everything possible, legal, political, and even personal, to undermine Jasmine's progress. And indeed, the backlash intensified rapidly. Within days, anonymous smear campaigns resurfaced online, amplified deliberately through coordinated social media strategies. False allegations appeared, insinuating Jasmine was profiting personally from her advocacy, accusing her of secretly receiving undisclosed payments from political or activist groups. While entirely fabricated, the relentless repetition of these accusations began seeding doubt among some members of the public. More troubling still, Jasmine began noticing strange incidents in her personal life. Her phone would randomly disconnect calls, texts occasionally vanished, emails mysteriously delayed or deleted. Initially dismissed as glitches, these disruptions soon appeared suspiciously systematic. One afternoon, Jasmine returned to her apartment, immediately noticing subtle signs someone had been there. A shifted picture frame, a drawer slightly open, nothing stolen but clearly searched. Anxiety surged painfully in her chest, fear unsettlingly real. Jasmine reported the incident to authorities but received little assurance or resolution, further exacerbating her sense of vulnerability. Around the same time, Jasmine's closest allies also faced mounting pressures. Marissa received an anonymous warning at work, urging her subtly but menacingly to distance herself from Jasmine if she valued her career. Amber Collins, meanwhile, faced increased scrutiny at her law firm, subtle threats suggesting further speaking out could endanger her career permanently. Brenda began receiving late-night harassing phone calls, each call growing increasingly threatening. The message was clear. Powerful interests were systematically attempting to isolate Jasmine by intimidating her supporters into silence. Feeling the emotional toll mounting daily, Jasmine sought Senator Sullivan's counsel. Meeting privately in the senator's Manhattan office one chilly February afternoon, Jasmine shared openly her concerns, voice strained with worry and exhaustion. "Senator Sullivan, they're trying to destroy everything we've accomplished," Jasmine admitted quietly. "They're targeting my friends, allies, my personal safety. It's systematic, deliberate intimidation." The senator listened closely, her gaze filled with compassion yet determination. "Jasmine, what you're experiencing is a classic backlash to meaningful social change. Every movement faces intense resistance precisely because it's working. They're afraid, deeply afraid, because your advocacy threatens powerful systems." "But at what cost?" Jasmine asked, her voice heavy with doubt. "How far will they go? I'm genuinely scared." Senator Sullivan leaned forward gently, her voice calm yet resolute. "Your fear is justified. But remember clearly, your courage terrifies them even more. They want you silent precisely because your voice resonates powerfully. Don't surrender now. Together we'll address security measures to ensure your safety and protection. You're not alone." Buoyed somewhat by the senator's steadfast support, Jasmine resolved once again to stand firm. Still, privately, anxiety and fear haunted her, insomnia and stress growing daily. Then, late one evening, a new crisis erupted publicly. An explosive article appeared online, sensationally alleging Jasmine had misappropriated donations intended for advocacy purposes. The article, meticulously detailed, claimed falsely that Jasmine diverted funds for personal expenses, luxurious clothing, expensive travel, and lavish personal entertainment. Jasmine was stunned, horrified by the audacity of the lies. The article cited fake financial documents, cleverly doctored to appear credible. Immediately, Jasmine publicly refuted the allegations, sharing transparently her organization's verified financial statements. Yet the damage was swift, intense. Major media outlets picked up the accusations, running sensational headlines, amplifying the false allegations widely. Critics seized the opportunity, flooding Jasmine's social media with attacks branding her a fraud, a hypocrite, even suggesting criminal investigations were warranted. Jasmine's emotional strain reached breaking point. Feeling deeply betrayed and disoriented, she briefly considered stepping back, genuinely questioning whether continuing was worth the overwhelming personal cost. Marissa, sensing Jasmine's despair, rushed immediately to her apartment, refusing to let her friend face this moment alone. "Jasmine, this is precisely their goal," Marissa argued fiercely, compassionately. "They want you exhausted, isolated, defeated. We both know these allegations are lies, but giving up now would hand them victory. You've fought too hard." Jasmine sat quietly, tears of frustration glistening. "Marissa, they'll never stop. Every step forward invites even worse retaliation." Marissa grasped Jasmine's hand firmly, determination fierce in her voice. "They won't stop until they're forced to. Jasmine, your courage is changing the world. Giving up now would silence thousands who've found their voices because of you. Stay strong." Taking Marissa's words deeply to heart, Jasmine resolved once more to fight. Immediately, Senator Sullivan's team provided legal support, publicly demanding retractions from media outlets spreading misinformation. Meanwhile, independent journalists uncovered quickly the truth behind the accusations, tracing falsified documents back to entities closely associated with powerful lobbying groups. Exposed publicly, those behind the false allegations faced immediate backlash, credibility shattered. Jasmine emerged vindicated once more, stronger publicly yet privately scarred deeply by the relentless emotional toll. Recognizing her vulnerability, Jasmine finally accepted increased security measures, reluctantly acknowledging genuine danger. Her apartment building installed surveillance cameras. Personal security accompanied her during public appearances. Cybersecurity experts reinforced her online safety. Though deeply unsettling, Jasmine understood clearly these measures were necessary, not merely for personal safety, but also for sustaining the movement she'd courageously ignited. Privately, Jasmine grappled deeply with exhaustion, fear, and loneliness. Yet each evening she received dozens of supportive messages, powerful reminders exactly why her advocacy mattered. Amber Collins texted her one night, a simple yet deeply meaningful message. "Jasmine, you're the bravest person I know. Stay strong. We're all behind you." These words reminded Jasmine profoundly. Despite the loneliness of leadership, she wasn't alone. Thousands stood alongside her, courageously refusing silence. Resolved deeply once again, Jasmine faced forward, prepared emotionally for the ongoing battle ahead. She recognized clearly now that resistance and retaliation were inevitable. But surrender wasn't. For Jasmine Mitchell, the choice was clear. Courageously continue forward, knowing clearly her fight was powerful, necessary, and far from finished. Spring arrived slowly in New York, thawing the harsh bitterness of a winter filled with trials and relentless opposition. The battle Jasmine Mitchell waged for workplace equality had taken a deep emotional toll. Yet beneath the exhaustion lay an ironclad resilience. Jasmine's story, now public knowledge nationwide, had triggered profound debate and opened an unprecedented dialogue around racial and cultural discrimination in professional spaces. Despite intense backlash, the movement gained extraordinary momentum. Jasmine's public advocacy had sparked thousands of conversations in offices, schools, and homes across America. People who previously felt unseen or unheard now recognized clearly their rights and their voices, united under Jasmine's courageous example. As public support mounted, Kensington Financial Services suffered increasing scrutiny. Their stock price faltered amid negative media attention, and investors openly questioned management's judgment. The pressure internally at Kensington became palpable. Employees, emboldened by Jasmine's example, began quietly voicing concerns over discriminatory policies, their courage escalating steadily into open confrontation. One warm April morning, Jasmine received a surprising invitation from Kensington's CEO, Richard Sterling. Sterling, notoriously private and traditionally resistant to public engagement, invited Jasmine for a discreet, face-to-face conversation. Initially suspicious, Jasmine accepted cautiously, sensing clearly this meeting represented a pivotal opportunity, though potentially filled with risk. Their meeting took place at a quiet, upscale cafe in Lower Manhattan. Sterling arrived first, seated discreetly at a secluded table near the back. As Jasmine approached, she noted subtle signs of weariness in Sterling's usually composed expression. "Jasmine," Sterling greeted carefully, his tone formal yet unexpectedly respectful. "Thank you for agreeing to meet privately." Jasmine acknowledged him calmly, masking internal tension. "I appreciate the invitation, Mr. Sterling. Frankly, I was surprised by it." Sterling nodded briefly, visibly uncomfortable. After ordering coffee, he began carefully, choosing words with cautious deliberation. "Jasmine, these past months have forced Kensington to deeply reconsider our practices. The public attention, the employee unrest, the testimonies from former employees. It's been challenging." "Challenging or revealing?" Jasmine countered gently, her voice steady yet uncompromising. Sterling paused, acknowledging Jasmine's quiet strength. "Revealing is probably more accurate. Jasmine, I won't pretend your advocacy hasn't been difficult for Kensington, but perhaps that's precisely what we needed. Our internal practices clearly require urgent reform." Jasmine listened intently, cautious optimism growing slowly. Sterling continued thoughtfully. "Our board recognizes clearly now that the policies which led to your termination, and others, are unjust. We've begun revising internal policies, explicitly banning discrimination based on culturally significant hairstyles, attire, or personal authenticity." Surprised, Jasmine watched Sterling carefully, searching his expression for sincerity. "That's a significant step forward, Mr. Sterling. But why discuss it privately? Why not publicly announce it openly?" Sterling hesitated briefly, his discomfort apparent. Kensington's board wants to first negotiate privately with you before making announcements. They recognize that simply changing policies internally won't fully address the harm caused, particularly to you. They're offering to reinstate you at Kensington, Jasmine. Publicly, formally, with full back pay and damages. Jasmine's breath caught briefly, shock rippling through her. She never anticipated Kensington would offer such a significant concession. Reinstatement would represent powerful vindication, signaling undeniably the company's acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Yet Jasmine's heart hesitated deeply, sensing clearly complexity beneath Sterling's offer. Accepting reinstatement, while symbolically powerful, might undermine the broader movement by allowing Kensington to control the narrative, framing Jasmine's advocacy merely as personal grievance rather than systemic change. Sensing Jasmine's hesitation, Sterling continued cautiously. Additionally, Kensington would publicly endorse the pending legislation you've championed, directly lobbying industry groups for similar reforms nationwide. Your reinstatement, combined with our public endorsement, would be extremely influential politically. Jasmine's pulse quickened, recognizing clearly Kensington's strategic calculation. Their offer wasn't merely restitution. It was calculated to rebrand themselves, turning public embarrassment into a strategic advantage. Mr. Sterling, Jasmine finally responded, her voice thoughtful yet resolute. I appreciate Kensington's acknowledgement. However, reinstatement isn't my goal. My advocacy was never merely personal. It was about systemic injustice affecting millions nationwide. Sterling nodded slowly, clearly expecting this response. I understand, Jasmine. What alternative would you suggest? Publicly endorse the legislation unconditionally, Jasmine proposed firmly. Commit openly, transparently to internal reforms. Provide restitution publicly, not just to me, but also establish a fund supporting employees affected by your discriminatory policies. That demonstrates real accountability and systemic commitment. Sterling considered carefully, clearly aware Jasmine held significant leverage. Finally, he agreed, recognizing Jasmine's proposal represented genuine integrity Kensington desperately needed publicly. Days later, Kensington publicly announced sweeping internal policy reforms explicitly banning appearance-based discrimination. Sterling openly apologized to Jasmine and publicly endorsed the legislation, committing corporate resources to actively lobby other companies and industry groups to follow Kensington's lead. Media attention surged dramatically. Jasmine's advocacy achieved a decisive, undeniable turning point. The public endorsement by Kensington Financial, once her fiercest adversary, significantly accelerated legislative momentum nationwide. Influential corporations, sensing shifting public sentiment and Kensington's powerful precedent, quickly followed suit, endorsing similar reforms. Yet even as Jasmine celebrated this extraordinary victory, she privately grappled deeply with conflicting emotions. Kensington's public apology represented extraordinary vindication. But personally, the emotional wounds from her firing and subsequent retaliation remained deeply raw. Reconciliation, Jasmine understood clearly now, wasn't merely political. It was profoundly personal, emotional, and complex. Senator Sullivan praised Jasmine warmly, recognizing clearly the courage and strategy behind Jasmine's negotiation. You've transformed a personal injustice into systemic reform, Jasmine. Your courage, persistence, and moral clarity have genuinely shifted public discourse. Yet privately, Jasmine felt emotionally weary. Victory had been extraordinary, but the emotional scars, fears, and anxieties lingered stubbornly. Quietly, she wondered deeply whether true healing was possible personally after such prolonged, intense struggle. Recognizing Jasmine's emotional vulnerability, Marissa arranged a small, intimate celebration one quiet evening at Jasmine's Brooklyn apartment. Amber Collins, Brenda, Derek Hammond, and Senator Sullivan herself gathered warmly, sharing quiet conversation, laughter, and genuine friendship. Later that evening, Jasmine quietly shared her lingering emotional struggles. Senator Sullivan listened compassionately, her voice gentle yet wise. Jasmine, emotional scars from deep injustice don't vanish overnight, even after victory. Healing takes time, patience, self-compassion. Allow yourself that grace. You've earned it deeply. Marissa spoke warmly, her voice fierce yet tender. Jasmine, your strength isn't diminished by acknowledging emotional pain. It's enhanced by it. Your authenticity, vulnerability, and courage inspire thousands precisely because they're real. Hearing these powerful, compassionate truths deeply comforted Jasmine's weary heart. She realized clearly now the turning point wasn't merely political. It was profoundly personal. Quietly, Jasmine accepted clearly that advocacy wasn't merely public activism. It required personal courage, emotional resilience, and deep self-compassion. Victory wasn't simply achieving legislative reform or public vindication. It also required personal healing, forgiveness, and genuine reconciliation with oneself. That quiet evening, surrounded by supportive friends and allies, Jasmine Mitchell finally allowed herself genuine peace and emotional release. Tears flowed quietly, not of sadness, but profound relief, gratitude, and hope. She knew clearly now. Her journey wasn't over. Yet the turning point achieved marked a profound, undeniable victory. Publicly, politically, personally, Jasmine Mitchell had not merely won a battle against workplace discrimination. She'd profoundly transformed herself, finding extraordinary courage, resilience, and authenticity amid deep adversity. And that, perhaps, was the most powerful victory of all. As summer began warming the bustling streets of New York City, Jasmine Mitchell found herself in a quiet moment of reflection, something that had become increasingly rare amid the whirlwind of advocacy and activism that defined her life. Her quiet Brooklyn apartment, bathed softly in early morning sunlight, felt peaceful for the first time in months. She sipped her coffee slowly, savoring the calm. Her thoughts wandered to everything she'd endured, achieved, and sacrificed since that fateful day Kensington Financial had terminated her employment. What started as a deeply personal battle had transformed into a nationwide movement that forever altered perceptions and conversations around racial and cultural discrimination in workplaces across America. Jasmine felt profoundly proud, yet quietly humbled, by the extraordinary changes her courage had sparked. The past months had brought both triumph and tribulation. Jasmine's successful negotiation with Kensington had proven transformative, opening the floodgates for corporate America to reevaluate deeply ingrained discriminatory practices. The legislative reforms she'd championed were now on the brink of becoming federal law. Senator Diane Sullivan's office had recently informed Jasmine privately that the final congressional vote was scheduled for just weeks ahead, anticipated widely to pass with historic bipartisan support. Yet, Jasmine recognized clearly now that the real legacy of her advocacy reached beyond politics or policies. It lay profoundly in the thousands of individuals who'd found their voices because she refused to remain silent. She regularly received letters, emails, and heartfelt messages from people across America, sharing personal stories of empowerment, courage, and newfound dignity inspired directly by her bravery. One morning, Jasmine received a particularly moving handwritten letter from a young high school student named Kayla Wright, from a small town in Mississippi. "Ms. Mitchell, you don't know me, but your bravery changed my life. I've been bullied at school for years for wearing my natural hair. Teachers, students, even the principal, said I looked unprofessional or unkempt. Your fight showed me my hair isn't a problem. It's powerful. For the first time, I feel proud being myself. Thank you for helping me find courage." Jasmine held the letter tightly, tears filling her eyes. Kayla's simple, heartfelt words captured precisely why Jasmine's journey mattered so deeply. This was her true legacy, not merely legislative reform or corporate policy changes, but genuine human empowerment, dignity, and courage. As Jasmine prepared to travel to Washington, D.C., for the historic final vote, Senator Sullivan invited her personally to speak briefly before Congress one last time, symbolically representing the movement she'd courageously ignited. Though initially hesitant, Jasmine accepted, recognizing clearly this represented a rare opportunity to publicly reflect on the journey she'd undertaken, and articulate clearly the profound significance this legislation held for millions nationwide. On the morning of the final congressional vote, Jasmine stood before a packed congressional chamber. Cameras clicked quietly, capturing the historic moment. Jasmine's voice, steady yet deeply emotional, resonated clearly. "Distinguished members of Congress, months ago, I was unjustly terminated from my employment due solely to my refusal to compromise my identity. That personal injustice sparked a national dialogue, not simply about workplace grooming policies, but fundamentally about human dignity, authenticity, and equality. Today's vote represents more than legislative reform. It symbolizes a powerful societal affirmation, recognizing explicitly that discrimination based on cultural identity, appearance, or natural hairstyles isn't merely unjust. It is deeply harmful, denying individuals their dignity, their authenticity, their humanity. Yet this victory, powerful as it is, represents merely the beginning, not an endpoint. Real equality demands ongoing vigilance, continual courage, and unwavering commitment. My journey began with injustice, but its true legacy, profoundly, lies within each person who finds their voice, their dignity, their courage, and chooses never again to remain silent." Applause filled the congressional chamber, signaling overwhelming, bipartisan support. Hours later, Jasmine watched proudly as Congress passed the historic legislation overwhelmingly, officially outlawing discrimination based on culturally significant hairstyles and appearance nationwide. The new law, fittingly named the Crown Workplace Equality Act, carried Jasmine's influence profoundly, its title directly acknowledging the powerful cultural symbolism hairstyles held for millions. Celebrations erupted nationwide. Yet privately, Jasmine felt deeply reflective, aware clearly this triumph represented both closure and a profound new beginning. Later that evening, alone in her hotel room overlooking the illuminated D.C. skyline, Jasmine allowed herself quiet tears of gratitude, pride, and relief. Yet even amid triumph, Jasmine recognized clearly the emotional cost of her journey. The past months had deeply tested her emotional resilience, mental health, and personal relationships. While publicly successful, privately she'd struggled profoundly with anxiety, loneliness, and vulnerability caused by relentless opposition and intense public scrutiny. Quietly, Jasmine realized her next chapter required deeply personal healing, restoring emotional balance, nurturing meaningful relationships, and reclaiming joyful aspects of life she'd sacrificed amid relentless activism. Advocacy had profoundly defined her recent life, yet Jasmine understood clearly now that activism was sustainable only if balanced carefully with emotional health, personal joy, and supportive community. Days later, returning to New York, Jasmine arranged privately to spend time quietly reconnecting deeply with family and friends she'd missed profoundly during intense months of activism. Visiting her mother Beverly, Jasmine shared heartfelt reflections honestly. "Mom, these months changed everything. They taught me courage, resilience, but also deep humility. Activism isn't merely public battles, it's deeply personal healing too. I lost myself at times, but I'm ready now to reclaim my peace." Beverly embraced Jasmine tightly, pride evident clearly in her voice. "Jasmine, your bravery inspired thousands. But now it's your turn. Heal deeply. Reclaim joy." Activism's greatest strength lies in authenticity, including honest vulnerability. You've earned deep healing now. Returning to Brooklyn, Jasmine began carefully restoring personal balance, consciously nurturing emotional health alongside continued advocacy. She publicly launched a supportive community initiative specifically providing mental health resources, counseling, and emotional support explicitly for activists, recognizing profoundly how deeply activism's emotional demands impacted mental health. In launching this initiative, Jasmine openly discussed her emotional journey publicly, encouraging transparency and authenticity in activist spaces. Her openness profoundly resonated. Thousands across America praised her courage discussing mental health struggles honestly, highlighting deeply the essential role emotional well-being played sustaining social justice advocacy. Weeks later, Jasmine received an unexpected yet profoundly moving invitation. Columbia University, her alma mater, invited Jasmine personally to deliver their commencement address. Initially hesitant given past painful memories, Jasmine eventually accepted, recognizing clearly the profound symbolic closure speaking publicly at Columbia represented. Standing proudly before thousands at Columbia's sunlit commencement ceremony, Jasmine spoke emotionally, yet eloquently. "My journey began right here at Columbia, marked both by triumph and painful adversity. Today, I return profoundly changed, understanding clearly now courage isn't merely overcoming external injustice, but profoundly confronting internal vulnerability, emotional healing, and authentic self-acceptance. Your true legacy isn't merely accomplishments achieved publicly. It's dignity lived authentically, courageously, vulnerably, each day." Her words profoundly moved thousands present, applause resonating powerfully across the campus where Jasmine's painful past had finally become healing wisdom shared openly. Privately afterward, Jasmine finally experienced profound personal reconciliation with herself, her past, her identity. Advocacy had profoundly shaped her legacy, but authentic emotional healing defined profoundly the courageous woman she'd become. And that, Jasmine Mitchell finally understood clearly, was the true meaning behind everything she'd courageously fought for. The dignity, authenticity, and humanity reclaimed not merely publicly, but deeply within herself. 2 years had passed since Jasmine Mitchell had been abruptly fired from Kensington Financial, sparking a movement that fundamentally reshaped America's approach to workplace discrimination. The legacy of the Crown Workplace Equality Act, now law nationwide, resonated profoundly, transforming countless workplaces and empowering thousands of individuals to reclaim their dignity and identity without fear of reprisal. On a warm September afternoon, Jasmine walked thoughtfully through Prospect Park in Brooklyn, absorbing the gentle rustling of leaves and the laughter of families enjoying late summer sunshine. Her life had gradually settled into a new rhythm, one balanced delicately between continued advocacy and personal fulfillment. The scars of her public battles had slowly healed, leaving Jasmine wiser, stronger, and profoundly more self-aware. Reflecting deeply, Jasmine felt gratitude for her journey, despite its steep emotional cost. She'd gained clarity. Advocacy wasn't merely about winning battles. It involved lifelong commitment to fostering genuine equality and sustaining emotional resilience. Though the media frenzy had quieted somewhat, Jasmine's activism continued steadfastly, though now quieter, more deliberate, rooted profoundly in compassion, sustainability, and meaningful personal relationships. That evening, Jasmine hosted an intimate gathering at her apartment, a modest celebration marking the 2-year anniversary of the landmark legislation. Friends, allies, former colleagues, and supporters gathered warmly, exchanging stories, laughter, and reflections about the movement's profound impact. Senator Diane Sullivan attended personally, embracing Jasmine warmly upon arrival, her voice filled deeply with admiration. "Jasmine, these past 2 years, your courage transformed lives profoundly. You've permanently reshaped our national conversation around dignity and identity. You should be incredibly proud." "I am, Senator," Jasmine acknowledged quietly, thoughtful sincerity evident clearly in her voice. Yet pride alone isn't enough. Sustaining real change demands vigilance and ongoing courage. That's my commitment going forward. As the evening progressed, Jasmine spoke thoughtfully to the gathered group, reflecting candidly on lessons she'd profoundly learned through her advocacy. 2 years ago, injustice profoundly altered my life's trajectory. Initially, I fought primarily for myself, but quickly realized true advocacy demanded selflessness, compassion, and humility. Real equality isn't simply legislative reform. It requires societal transformation rooted deeply in understanding and empathy. Our movement achieved remarkable progress, but the road ahead remains long. Her heartfelt words resonated profoundly. Amber Collins spoke next, voice emotional yet strong. "Jasmine, your bravery gave countless people like me the courage to reclaim dignity lost through discrimination. Because of your advocacy, today I stand proudly myself, no longer diminished, but empowered." Derek Hammond, now deeply involved personally in diversity training and corporate responsibility advocacy, added powerfully. "Working within Kensington, I witnessed firsthand how deeply entrenched systemic discrimination was. Your courage, Jasmine, forced profound institutional introspection nationwide. Corporate America is fundamentally changed because of you." Later that evening, privately, Jasmine stepped onto her small balcony, overlooking Brooklyn's glittering nighttime skyline. Marissa joined her quietly, sensing Jasmine's contemplative mood. "You've come far," Marissa observed warmly, voice gentle yet knowing. "But I sense clearly you're thinking deeply about what's next." Jasmine nodded softly, thoughtful introspection evident in her expression. "I've realized clearly now advocacy isn't merely public battles. It's deeply personal, emotional, lifelong commitment. But Marissa, I also recognize clearly activism demands balance, sustainability, emotional health. I'm considering founding an organization explicitly dedicated to supporting activists emotionally, offering mental health resources, emotional support, training for sustainable advocacy." Marissa smiled warmly, pride evident in her voice. "That's powerful, Jasmine. You're uniquely positioned now to advocate authentically, sharing hard-earned emotional wisdom openly. Activists desperately need support. Your idea profoundly meets that need." Over subsequent months, Jasmine quietly dedicated herself fully toward creating precisely that vision. She launched officially the Resilient Advocate Project, a nonprofit specifically providing mental health support, counseling, emotional resilience training, and community building explicitly for activists across America. In establishing this organization, Jasmine spoke publicly, transparently sharing her personal struggles honestly. Anxiety, loneliness, fear she'd profoundly experienced during intense public activism. Her authenticity resonated powerfully. Thousands of activists nationwide quickly joined the organization, grateful deeply for emotional support openly offered. Jasmine found profound personal fulfillment in this quieter, deeply impactful advocacy. No longer defined merely by her past battles, she'd discovered clearly advocacy's deeper meaning, sustainably nurturing profound societal change through authenticity, compassion, emotional resilience, and community. Several months later, Jasmine received another deeply significant honor. She was selected personally to receive a prestigious National Civil Rights Award for transformative advocacy. Accepting humbly at a formal ceremony in Washington, D.C., Jasmine delivered a powerful yet emotional speech clearly outlining advocacy's true ongoing purpose. Today's honor deeply moves me, but profoundly humbles me too. Activism taught me clearly courage isn't merely confronting external injustice. True courage requires confronting internal vulnerabilities openly, compassionately. Advocacy isn't simply about achieving victories publicly. It's profoundly about empowering individuals emotionally, nurturing sustainable societal transformation. Our greatest victories aren't merely laws or policies. They're dignities reclaimed, identities proudly affirmed, human lives authentically empowered. Her speech profoundly resonated nationwide, underscoring Jasmine's uniquely authentic approach to activism, vulnerability, emotional wisdom, compassion shaping powerfully societal understanding of genuine equality advocacy. Privately afterward, Jasmine visited thoughtfully the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, contemplating deeply America's ongoing struggle toward genuine equality. She recognized clearly now her advocacy journey was never truly finished. Each generation faced distinct yet persistent societal injustices demanding courageous advocacy. Quietly, Jasmine accepted profoundly her advocacy wasn't merely a chapter in her life. It defined profoundly who she authentically was, shaping powerfully her ongoing purpose, values, identity. Yet alongside that profound understanding lay clarity about maintaining personal emotional health, balance, meaningful relationships, and genuine joy sustainably amid activism's lifelong commitment. Returning thoughtfully to Brooklyn days later, Jasmine sat quietly at her apartment window, overlooking gently bustling streets below, feeling profound gratitude, deep appreciation for her life's complex yet meaningful journey. Quietly, Jasmine understood profoundly now her true legacy wasn't merely advocacy or activism itself. It lay profoundly within authenticity, courageously embraced, emotional wisdom compassionately shared, and dignity powerfully reclaimed personally, societally. As twilight gently painted Brooklyn's sky golden, Jasmine felt peace deeply. The road ahead remained profoundly uncertain. Advocacy required ongoing courage, vulnerability, resilience. Yet she felt ready profoundly, stronger, wiser, emotionally healthier, authentically herself. Smiling gently, Jasmine recognized clearly now she'd profoundly transformed injustice into extraordinary societal progress. Not merely through public battles courageously fought, but profoundly through authenticity courageously lived, emotional wisdom compassionately shared, and dignity powerfully reclaimed personally and societally. And whatever uncertainties awaited profoundly ahead, Jasmine Mitchell felt profoundly ready, emotionally resilient, authentically empowered, compassionately courageous. Her advocacy journey profoundly continued, but profoundly now balanced sustainably alongside genuine emotional health, profound authenticity, compassionate vulnerability. And in that profound personal balance lay Jasmine Mitchell's extraordinary, authentic strength, the profound foundation genuinely empowering courageous, lifelong advocacy.